Good afternoon, friends. Uh, this is a very special session. I think it's Kunal's first time at the Jharkhand Literary Meet. Kunal has been to our other two festivals in Kolkata and in Bhubaneswar. So this is the third and equally special arm of our Lit Meet calendar. So today we welcome Kunal with a new book, In an Ideal World. I've read a lot of Kunal's novels. The more recent ones remain very, very fresh in my mind. But this novel has a different tenor, a different pitch, and a different story in many ways. And parts of it sound like we are reading a part of our newspaper, or we're scrolling through our Facebook and we see a bit of news, and it fills your heart with fear as a parent. And this book is is a book of our times. So thank you, Kunal, for bringing In an Ideal World to Jharkhand, to Ranchi, and it's the first live session on the book.
Absolutely. Thank you, Malavika. Thank you, audience. I'm very, very delighted to be here. I wish I could spend more time in Ranchi, but unfortunately I have to leave later today. So this is all the time I have with the wonderful people of Ranchi here.
So let's just dive into it. Your last novel was Sarojini's Mother, which was about a quest, and it was as much about Kolkata as it was about its protagonists. So this novel is also a quest, but a different one. And what made you write In an Ideal World in 2020-21?
You know, uh, 2020 was a difficult year for all of us, not simply in where we live, but all around the world. It was difficult because of the pandemic. But for me, and I guess for a lot of others, it was also a difficult year in India because of the outpouring of hate. There was a lot of hate in this country. Look, I was born and raised in India. And in my time, when we were growing up, there were differences of opinion. Political parties took different positions. People voted for one party, people rejected other parties. Differences of opinion were a fact of life in Indian society. But suddenly, over the last few years, especially in 2019 and 2020, the hate quotient seemed to have gone up. Okay? Now, I want to be absolutely plain and blunt about this. Our country now faces a choice between two visions of what India as a nation should be. Okay? One vision is that of India as a secular, pluralistic, inclusive democracy, where it doesn't matter what your religion is, what your caste is, everybody has equal stake in Indian society. And now there's another vision of India, which is India is a Hindu Rashtra. Okay? So two different ideals of what this country is about. Now, you asked me this question, Malvika, why did I write this novel? I wrote this novel in anguish. I wrote this novel in pain because I felt that this division between the two visions of India is being played out in the domain of intimidation, of violence, of suppression. You only have to watch television news or attend to social media to see the abuses that come from one side to the other. Okay? And it is not restricted to people outside of us. What anguished me is that I found that members of my family, of our families all around, were split along these lines of ideals. Okay? Parents, children, brothers and brothers, friends and friends, one part of a community against another part of the community. That we as Indians were now filled with distrust, okay, with respect to each other, suspicious of each other's motives. And it's not a question of partisanship or supporting one party over another party. What anguished me and what led me to write this novel is to understand for myself what happens when there's a clash of ideals in society, okay, which we are experiencing now. And what happens when that clash of ideals comes into the life of a family? And in my story, the life of the parents and their only son. So that's why I wrote this novel.
So yes, I was just going to ask you about the story itself, but since you've mentioned the start of it, I will take the liberty of continuing. It's about a parents and their son, and how they make discoveries about what the son is doing in college, what he has become, and how different from their worldview, his worldview has become. And it's a journey for the parents. There's a physical journey from Kolkata to this small university town. And there they come to the point where this bridge, where this rift which Kunal talks about is absolutely palpable. And what it does to that family is what the story is about. I don't want to give any spoilers, but it is at one level a page turner, but at another level it asks of us very serious questions. So that's the book, and we'll be doing a reading from it as well. But one thing that struck me about the book is it's not as though people do not write about political divisions. There's enough in literature over the last decade in India which talks about this growing schism which you've spoken about. But your novel struck me as one which has compassion and tries to tread the middle ground. So you have spoken about the Nakshal period. You have spoken about the sensitivity the son shows to the domestic help in the family. So the book it's a study in the gray of what India is going through. So did you have trouble navigating that middle path, or was that your committed plan for this novel?
Allow me to go back a little bit into personal history. I grew up in the 1970s in Bengal. And anybody who knows Bengal in the 1970s knows the name Nakshal Badi, right? So our campuses were rife with political tussles between the Maoists, the Naxalites, and the government. I grew up in that milieu. I did not take sides. I did not take sides. I believe that the extreme left ideology was equally damaging in terms of creating a fundamental rift within us Indians. You see, what has happened with our society, which I was trying to portray in this novel, is that the middle ground is being lost. We are the middle ground. Okay? We don't believe in killing anybody. Even if you have differences of opinion, we will discuss it over a cup of tea. Okay? If we disagree, we disagree. Okay? This is the voice of compassion, the voice of reasoning, the voice of well-crafted compromises which must happen in every society. However, we have tend to give up the middle ground and allowed the two extremes to scream at each other. Okay? The two extremes screaming at each other has actually taken our autonomy and our right away as citizens of this country. Okay? So the middle ground is the natural ground, not simply for me, but for most Indians. I'm very happy to discuss hijab. I'm very happy to discuss CAA, NRC. Very happy to discuss cow slaughter. Very happy to discuss all the contentious issues or that of Indian history, the depiction of Indian history. But why can't we do it as adults, as a grown-up civilization, where differences of opinion are respected and they can be debated and argued and consensus or compromises reached so that our country can go forward. Okay? Unfortunately, what has happened is that this middle ground of Indian sensibility, this is a core. I'm going to divert a little bit, if I may, Malavika, and I'll tell you an anecdote, okay, which again informed my novel. The year was 2013. So BJP was not in power, INC was in power, UPA was in power, excuse me. And there was a seminar in Oxford University. I was a professor at Oxford University, and there were 3 participants. One was Salman Khurshid, who was then the Foreign Minister of India. The second was Arun Jaitley, who was then the leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha. And the third was myself, as an Oxford professor. And the topic was, what is India's contribution to the world? What is it that we bring uniquely to the world that no other country brings? Okay. And so we talked about aspects like, is it innovation? No, we are not the world leaders in innovation. We want to be, but we are not. Are we the fastest growing economy and the largest manufacturing country in this world? No, we are not. We may aspire to be, but we are not. So what can the world learn from us, Indians? What can the world learn from us? And believe me, Mr. Jetli, Mr. Khurshid, and an Oxford professor who belonged to neither party came to one conclusion. And the conclusion was, we can teach the world how to live with diversity. You know? We can teach the world that the Soviet Union did not work, a collection of different groups of people. We can teach the world that China couldn't deal with diversity. It oppressed its ethnic minorities, established the Hans as the superior race in China. But in India, every citizen, no matter what their religion, their language, their caste is, has equal rights under the Constitution. We can teach the world that despite our problems, and there will be problems when people of such differences live in one geographical area. There will be differences. But we can teach the world how to live with differences. Okay? That is my middle ground. That is the middle ground of most Indians, I believe.
Okay, so you talk about the middle ground, and you talk. So the middle ground. Before I just a quick question. When we talk about the middle ground these days, to either fringe, they tell you that if you are trying to be in the middle ground, you are being spineless. You are being there is no such thing as neutral. In many ways, it is what George W. Bush had said: you're either with us or against us, or not with us. So why do you think there's a feeling equally among the liberals as well as among those who believe in a different vision of India that if you traverse the middle path, you are a cop-out and therefore your opinion does not matter?
No, I think that is wrong. Because history has shown that extreme opinion actually leads to disaster. If you think about, I deliberately chose this title, In an Ideal World. When we talk and we criticize, we say we criticize the government, or we criticize an organization. We say, ideally, it should be like this. In the ideal world, this is how it should be. Now, what does the ideal mean? Ideal means everybody should believe and subscribe to that ideal. And those that do not will be excluded. So the drive towards extremes or idealism is a drive towards marginalization, towards demonization, towards throwing people out rather than including people in. Okay? So going the middle path can be criticized by, I fully expect both the spectrum, the left liberal spectrum, as also the RSS groups would find reasons to fault this book. They will say, look, this deviates from our ideal. Okay? It is neither this ideal, it is not that ideal. And what I'm trying to say is, the middle position is not a cop-out. The middle position is one where we can actually look at values from all the different perspectives and actually craft them together into a robust growth center where people can opt in, people can buy into, and people can find something that resonates with them.
So, as you can see from the conversation, it's all about real issues, and so does this. The book too deals with very real, very contemporary issues. So, I think this is a good time for you to do a quick reading about the moment of truth for the father when he realizes what his son is all about in distant college town, the fictional Manhar.
Okay. So, this is the story of Joy Sengupta and Rohini Sengupta and their only son, Vivek, who they call Bobby. So Joy Sengupta is a branch manager of a bank. Could be HDFC, ICICI, is a branch manager. And his wife is the principal of a private school. Could be a DPS, okay? They have a reasonably comfortable life in Kolkata. Now, both of them were activists in college. You know, played the guitar and sang songs of Joan Baez and Bob Dylan. They acted in theater. They were sort of lefties. But, you know, they are now sort of in their 40s and they have to earn a living. But they hold on to their liberal perspectives and ideas about life. Their son, Vivek, or Bobby, is a student of computer science. And he studies in a neighboring state. That state could be Jharkhand, could be Bihar, could be MP, could be Haryana. I've given it a name which is not the real name of any city. Okay? Now, the part that I'm going to read to you is, one day, when the branch is about to close, Joy gets a phone call. And he gets a phone call from a woman called Mimi, who he knew as a close friend in college. They were all a part of the same group. They were all activists, okay? They all did theater like the young people before us in the session. They recited poetry and things of that nature. So Mimi calls up Joy and says, can we meet? And Joy says, sure. And they haven't seen each other for 20 years. So Joy says, come home. Let's have a real good chat. She says, no. I want to meet you alone. And I want to meet you alone this evening. And he feels a bit odd. What is the urgency? Why does she want to meet this evening? Why can't it be tomorrow? But he goes to meet Mimi. So the piece that I'm going to read to you is where Joy meets Mimi, and Mimi tells him that she works as an administrator in the same university that Bobby is attending. Okay? So I'll skip the first bits. There's a lot of banter between two people who have met after 20 years. And then Joy says, so you've quit being an activist and become a despot, whipping students into shape. What activism are you talking about? Mimi retorted, do you have any idea what's happening in college campuses all over India? It's nothing short of war. You mean like the wars we used to fight? Boycotting exams, calling strikes, barricading, picketing, shouting slogans. Dropping her knife onto her plate, Mimi gave Joy a long stare. You really don't know, do you? Our thing was child's play, a storm in a teacup. That's all finished. Now you have the real deal. You've heard of the nationalist students, haven't you? Joy nodded, with an eye on the little girl at the next table who was badgering her mother for ice cream. Those that want to cleanse the nation of impurities. He recited lines read in the papers, making the sign of double quotes in the air. Exactly. They want to create a Hindu homeland in India. They're talking about a golden age. Muslims are outsiders. Christians too. Only they are the true inheritors of the soil, its divine children. But that's just saying. Joy stifled a yawn. Like we used to demand, remember, a dictatorship of the proletariat. It's more than words. These students are hell-bent on stopping meat from entering the campus. They want a curfew at the women's hostel. They're harassing liberal-minded professors, targeting Muslims, storming plays, banning couples from dating on Valentine's Day, demanding that the university rewrite the textbooks. The nationalists are creating havoc. You know about Altaf, don't you? Mimi gazed unblinkingly at him. Who? The poor Muslim boy who was abducted from his hostel room in our university. He and his friends opposed the nationalists. Maybe there were some arguments between the two sides. He was kidnapped and taken away. No one knows where he is. Joy nodded. He had watched it on the news. The mention of Manhar and Bobby's university had caught his eye. It's been months now. There's no trace of him. Altaf's mother, Ruxana, has come from her village to look for her son. The poor woman has been going around pleading to everyone, the university administration, the police, the government, but no one's come forward to help her. Do you think he might still be alive? Joy tapped the empty espresso cup on the table, drawing Gomez's attention. Can I have one more of those too? Mimi spoke under her breath. Her face seemed more strained than when she'd arrived at Fleury's. Fidgeting with her spoon, she resumed. That's the question no one has an answer to. Is he being held captive in a secret hideout? Are they torturing him? Have they finished him off already? But someone must know, right? He can't simply disappear into thin air. Taking a sip of her espresso, Mimi leant forward on her chair. You can help find Altaf. Let his mother know what's happened to him. Me! Joy's exclamation drew attention to their table. A senior journalist holding court among his juniors gave him an inquisitive look. Busy with other patrons, Gomez struck out his hand to indicate he'd be free soon to attend to Mr. Sengupta and his guest. This is why I've come all the way from Manhar to plead with you, to meet you face to face, rather than speak on the phone. You can help Altaf and his mother. I wish to meet you urgently before it's too late to save him. Setting down his cup, Joy collected himself before speaking. How can I help, Mimi? I'm a banker. We don't know about these things. We deal with money, with savings and loans, not kidnapping. If the police won't help, how can I? You know someone who knows. You can persuade him to reveal the truth. Mimi's voice took on greater urgency. Your son, Bobby, can tell us everything that has happened to Altaf. And so, just to continue with the gist of the story, Mimi tells Joy that his son has become a leader of the nationalists, and he was involved in the kidnapping of Altaf. And unless Joy is able to convince his son to reveal the truth, nobody will ever know the truth of what happened to Altaf. And of course, this comes as a huge shock to Joy and Rohini. First of all, the accusation is their son has committed a crime. And the second is, if indeed Bobby has become a nationalist, then it's so different from their own worldview. How did this happen? When did this happen? Okay? And then Joy and Rohini undertake a journey to Manhar to find out the truth. And that's the crux of this novel, and that's the mystery that they're out to solve.
Thanks for the reading, Kunal. The part you read for shortly after Rohini and Joy go to Manhar, and the journey itself seems like how we are cocooned in our world, and they're taking a voyage into the unknown. Do you think that's part of the problem we face today, that we all live in echo chambers, we all live in our little cocoons, and really don't know anything about what happens in another part of our own city at times?
Absolutely. India is, in many ways, India is not one country. It's many countries. Okay? Many countries that are cohabiting with each other. There's a world of students here in Ranchi. Okay? And there's perfect cohesion within that world. That ecosystem is well understood. Now there's and it's a completely different world, few hundred miles away in another city. Okay? And so what Joy Sengupta and Rohini Sengupta discover, that in Kolkata, they are a part of the liberal elite. Their friends are university professors, they work in advertising, some have NGOs, they travel abroad quite a bit, kids study in foreign countries. They're all very liberal, they meet up and they have parties. That's their world. But when Joy Sengupta goes to Manhar, this small town in a neighboring state, he finds a completely different ecosystem, okay? Where they live there's a society which he finds where girls are not encouraged to take up jobs, okay? They're frowned upon. The city is ghettoized. The Muslims are in one part of the city, the others are in another part of the city, okay? And there's a lot of stress and tension between the different parts of Manhar. So it's a very different ecosystem to the one that they're familiar with. And there's a point when Joy wonders, which is the real India? Which one is the real India? Okay? Or are there really many Indias?
Okay, so before we open it out to, the audience for questions, is there, they often say the best way to know whether you've done well in a novel of this nature is if you've offended everybody. So is there any feedback you've received? How have people, the early readers of this novel reacted?
You know, I've written many novels. I mean, written over a dozen novels. This one has caught me by surprise. It has caught me by surprise. And maybe I should not be surprised because it's a contemporary novel with a lot of political thoughts within it. But politicians have tweeted about this novel. Filmmakers have tweeted about this novel. I've written personal letters from leaders of political parties, which has completely surprised me. I've also received some trolls. I've also received some trolls and some really ugly trolls on social media telling me to, go here, go there, and so on and so forth. But as you mentioned, one cannot write authentically a piece of fiction about today's India where there is polarization, where there is division, and not be criticized, and criticized on both sides. And in terms of the liberal criticism, there's somebody in a newspaper article has said, KunalBasu has not gone far enough. He's not stuck a knife into the heart of the problem. And if I knew that journalist, I would have said, KunalBasu does not want to stick a knife into anybody. Okay? And in society and in life, what we need to do is throw away the knives and let the conversations begin.
Part of this novel is in a university town, as we've mentioned, and you yourself have been a professor and in a very different, in the UK, in Oxford. So you know young people, so you've met students from across the world when you were teaching there. Do you see similar rumblings, do you see similar turmoil in other students from other parts of the world?
What we are seeing in India today is by no means unique. There's a huge tussle in the United States where I studied in the US and I visit the US quite frequently for my writing, in continental Europe, in the United Kingdom, and certainly in other countries as well. There is a division that is opening up. And one side of the division is groups of people, citizens, students, who want inclusiveness, okay, who want to live with diversity and address the issues of diversity. For example, in England right now, there's Black Lives Matter movement has led to a huge groundswell among students, also in my university, Oxford University, okay, in terms of how can we make our universities, our student bodies much more inclusive, okay, rather than white male only, okay. On the other hand, we have what I would call nativist movements, which certainly Trump in America stands for, as well as other leaders in other parts of the world, which are saying France is for the French, England is for the English, America is for the white Americans, and everybody else needs to be excluded from that. Okay? And students too have been caught up in this. So there is a lot of campus turmoil in all over the world on what appears to be, to me, in my humble opinion, as a central question of human civilization. Are we going to live together as a species, or are we going to break ourselves apart and live like different species, like species of animals inhabiting the same jungle? Okay? So this is a central civilizational issue of our times, and it is affecting students as well.
The main story is about this family, but there is a shadow family in the story of Altaf and his mother. So, and just after that, I remember messaging you about a similar incident that took place where a student had disappeared. So, what research went into creating that situation, and how much of the novel is, you're reading the newspapers, and how much of it do you think also is from your own earlier novels, and you've written in Bengali about darker topics, let's say?
Yeah. I don't start writing a novel saying, oh, I'm going to write a novel which is about inclusiveness or diversity or this or that. I write a novel when a story appears in my head. And it's a very difficult question to answer. Why a particular story appears in my head? Very hard to answer. I was anguished, I was
Who was
troubled.
the first character who appeared in your
The
head?
first character that appeared in my mind was Rohini Sengupta.
The mother.
The mother. Okay? And the mother finding out that the son has really become a completely different person than what she thought he was or he could be. Okay? And the shock of that. Okay? It's a son who is actually good in studies. He's not done anything bad. He's not a drunk, he's not a drug addict. Vivek Sengupta or Bobby is a reasonably good student. He is courteous to elders. He wants to do good. He's helpful to others. But in his mind, he wants to create a kind of a nation where only certain kinds of people, Hindus, will have dominance and everybody else will be outsiders or they will have to be subservient. Okay? So, but in real life, he's not a bad guy. So what struck me when I was writing this novel is, in my novel there are no demons, there are no devils. It is us, and us being possessed by ideas which can actually create a lot of challenges within society. When I was doing my research and trying to read and understand the different ideologies, I did come across the story of Najib Ahmed, who was a JNU student who was abducted from his college campus in 2016 and he's not been found yet. Okay? And there was a big movement at that time, student movement in JNU and in other parts of India asking for the police and authorities to find Najib. Okay? My story is not really as much about Altaf, because Altaf has not been found. I will not tell you what happens at the end of the novel, but for most parts of the novel, Altaf doesn't exist. What exists is Altaf's mother, Rukhsana, who's this poor woman, his first generation son gone to university, first generation gone to university, okay? And then he's disappeared. And this woman is going from pillar to post, trying to find her son. And through her, we also see, as we see in Rohini, the courage, the resilience, and the power of women in our society. Okay? We're not willing to give up. Not willing to give up.
Okay, so I think this is a good point to throw the conversation open. Any questions? There's a mic can please be taken. There's a question there.
Is it?
It's on, it's on.
This question is for Mr. KunalBasu, the storyteller. A sick horse is still a horse. If I compare politics of inclusion to a horse, which I feel is a beautiful looking animal, of exclusion to any other animal of your choice, why aren't the politicians of inclusiveness being able to sell the horse? Is it incompetence or is the syntax wrong? Because a horse, as you will admit, is saleable.
Yes, got it, yes. So basically he's asking, clearly it's not a very difficult idea to sell inclusivity. So what is the problem?
In a way, it is a difficult idea to sell. You know, we take lots of things as for granted. You know, we say, we sing with Michael Jackson, we say, we are the world, we are all together, okay? But when it comes to the crux of living in communities, around communities that have different cultural practices, religious practices, social practices, schisms may open up. That is the reality of life, the reality of life. And those realities oftentimes lead to extreme views within people, and they're communicated. Don't forget, in 1947, somebody today in the beginning of the inauguration said that on 15th August this year, we'll be celebrating 75 years of India's independence. India is a very young nation. France is more than 350 years old as a nation. Our civilization is many, many times older. But as a nation, we are a young nation. Okay? And therefore, the debates and discourses about what kind of nation should we be in the future, it is perfectly valid to raise those questions. It's perfectly valid to address those questions. Okay? I'm not saying here that those who say that Indian history has been distorted should be thrown out of the window. No. The voices should be heard. The discussion should take place. Okay? But discussion should take place in the context that all of us are Indians. And we have to collectively decide where we would want to end up in the future. Okay? So it's not an easy sell. Sometimes the most logical, the most plausible, the most simple message is the most difficult one to convince people about.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Where are you? Oh.
Yes, if you can hear me, sir. Sir, okay. It's you are teaching inclusiveness actually to a particular community in India. So from the characters, it's absolutely clear. So they're all the characters from a particular religion, and they have been painted as if they are not tolerant actually, like other people.
So I would suggest you read the novel. You're writing a
You
separate
see-
one in your question. I would suggest if you have a question to do with something we've said, please go ahead.
No,
But
what is the message? Sir,
the
sir,
message is quite different in the novel. I can vouch
Now,
for that.
what I perceived from the 2 or 3 pages he read out here, from there only I'm asking a question. I have not read the whole novel.
What is a question?
The question is actually it's a teaching inclusiveness to a particular community. So I think that it's somewhat biased actually as far message is concerned.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes, sir.
A novel is not a compendium of the condition of India. Okay?
Okay.
A novel is a slice, is one snapshot of the whole picture. So in this particular novel, you're absolutely right, the issue of conflict is a religious issue of conflict. Okay? But bear in mind, there are many other points of conflict that are equally alive in our country. Let us not forget that for generations, for years, we Indians have denied the real position to people that we called Dalits. They're not. They are the indigenous people of India. So there are conflict points there as well. There are
Yes.
conflict points with respect to gender. That we have assigned women of all kinds of religious groups into certain kinds of positions which no longer are defensible in the 21st century. But my novel, I'm not writing a book about the condition of India and the challenge of inclusiveness of India. Okay? I'm writing a novel, and therefore it has a slice of that picture.
But mostly we find in
Sir,
modern
could
times.
we take another question? You could take the
it's
question.
not. It's not the other way around, actually, sir.
No, I will send you a small reading list that would ease your mind a bit. Could we
Thank you,
have
thank
another question, please?
Hello, hello. Sir, do you not also think that the problem of hate or not accepting the pluralistic stance is not endemic to India? It is a worldwide problem, and it has to do with the recent technological advancements, the rising connectivity, and the smartphone, the social media, and it has been exploited in several countries. And this problem of polarization is rampant in America, is rampant in the USA, and if you like follow Fox News and CNN, you will see the difference. You won't find news anywhere. You will find quotations of politicians in either pages. You won't find news anywhere. And that is also the case in India. And I feel it has a lot to do with the age we are coming in.
Yes.
Rather than...
Good question, yes.
Good
yes.
question. And I agree with you. As I mentioned, this is a worldwide phenomenon. This is not simply something we see uniquely in India. But what the reasons for that are, what the factors, I'm sure is a very complex domain. Technology, connectivity, and all of those play very significant roles. Are there other factors also, like major economic factors of disparity and so forth? I'm not a sociologist. I'm not an economist, and I will not be able to lay it out entirely for you.
Neither am I, sir. I am a student of literature.
Okay, Any other questions?
Hello, my name is Atul Agrawal. During the course of your discussion, you said we have to decide as humans or Indians which part or which domain or let's say हम लोग अपनी सोसाइटी को कितने पार्ट्स में डिवाइड करेंगे, whether we will live as one whole human civilization or we live as Agrawals or Muslims or Hindus or whatever. That was the just gist of the thing. What I would like to bring to your attention, not that you don't know, but are we not going haywire in terms of our attention to human nature? So there is certain amount of nature in everybody which is complete, and according to that nature every human acts. One of the part of the nature is greed. We are all greedy. We are all very selfish. So how would you react to that in terms of the society now?
Yeah, again, a very fair question. And look, it's a very big question for which I will not be able to give you a satisfactory answer in a very short while. It's a relevant question. What is
Write
that?
another novel on it.
So the question is there something fundamental about human nature that leads us towards divisions, towards selfishness, and does that lead to violence, hate, and so on and so forth? You know, Sigmund Freud had written, the history of humanity is the history of bloodshed. Okay? So that's one school of thinking. You know, the other school of thinking believes that we human beings have an immense capacity also of transformation. And that is also shown in human history. Immense capacity for transformation. Give an example, Emperor Ashoka. Emperor Ashoka was a ruthless killer, was an absolute ruthless killer. But he transformed himself into a person of compassion. Okay? So I think we human beings, even if there are elements in our nature, in our fundamental nature, that drive us towards tribalism, towards groupism, it is possible to overcome that. At least that's what I would want to believe as a human being. If not, then what is the hope for us in the future?
I think we don't have time for another question. So I just wanted to bring something to your notice, and we could conclude on that, which is what Mr. Agarwal and the young gentleman on the other side said about his point about social media. Does it just bring out the worst sides of us? And maybe, when we are invisible, things like greed, things like selfishness, we are more free to expose them and in a way indulge them.
Absolutely. I mean, there are both sides of the argument. Social media has given voice to lots of people who would otherwise not be able to reach out. Not everybody's statement is carried by the press. Okay, so that I see favorably. But what I do see, and I'm sure all of you see, is the tendency to make a knee-jerk reaction, the tendency not to understand, not to evaluate. And it's not simply a social media phenomenon. I think we in our society, we are becoming intolerant of contrarian views. So as soon as we hear something like this gentleman did, he hasn't read the book, he assumed that I have a certain perspective. Okay? And, there are examples of that. And what I'm saying here is we, the middle ground, have a role to play. We need to, when we see that on social media, we need to go in and say, no, look, let's have a debate about differences of opinion, but we cannot scream abuses at each other. This is not the Indian way. The types of things that I see on social media, when we were kids, if my parents saw me writing those things, they would say, what's wrong with you? Okay. Have you not been educated properly? It's the role of our teachers, it's the role of our elders, it's the role of our professionals, it's the role of our authors, it's the role of our cultural people in every domain to say, we will tolerate differences of opinion, we shall not tolerate abuse. Okay? And we have not played that role well. We have to play that role better.
Absolutely. And therefore, we love your question because we love the fact that we both disagree with it.
Hello.
So, okay, now the thing is, Kunal has a flight, which I'm
Hello.
very anxious he does not
Hello.
miss.
I have one question.
Just one quick question, and that's it. But it can't be a comment. Quick question.
ओके सर जैसा कि एक नेशनलिज्म के ऊपर राष्ट्रवाद की एक अलग अलग परिभाषा बन चुकी है। अगर कोई राष्ट्रवाद का विरोध करता है तो हो सकता है उसके नज़र में लेफ्टिस्ट हो सकता है, और जब कोई सपोर्ट करता है तो राइटिस्ट हो सकता है। लेकिन सर रियल में नेशनलिज्म का मतलब है क्या? क्योंकि सर मेरे अनुसार जो मुझे लगता है नेशनलिज्म एक ऐसी चीज है जहां हम हर एक के बारे में बात करें। क्या कंट्री के लिए हमारा सही है, कोई
तो आप
मेरा
जानना
फ्रेंड।
चाहते हैं उनका क्या विचार है
यस
नेशनलिज्म
सर,
के बारे में?
मतलब एक आइडियल क्या हो सकता है नेशनलिज्म
What
में?
is your definition of nationalism?
My definition of idealism, I wish
Nationalism,
nationalism, I wish I could speak in the language of Rabindranath Tagore. So, all I would request you is available in English translation. Read Rabindranath's essay on nationalism. So, where he says that nationalism is a very tricky concept. On the one hand, we want to be proud of where we belong and our past and our heritage. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being proud of our heritage, our culture, our language, the creative people of our past. There's nothing wrong with that. And being protective of all that we think is good. Okay? But he, and especially in his writing to Romain Rolland, another great Nobel laureate and philosopher in France, he said, and France was then going through the Second World War. So he said, the First World War. He said, you know, nationalism is tricky because if you extend this pride too much, then it becomes a part of a very dangerous ego. When he says that only my view of my nation is correct and it supersedes everything else. Now, I have not said this in a very pretty way, in a very nice way. If you want to know what I believe and feel, I would request you to go read Rabindranath Tagore.
Thank you. I think Rabindranath Tagore is always a very good place to end any discussion. Thank you so much, Kunal. Wonderful book. May you write many more. And thank you for fitting us into your very, very busy weekend. The book is available at the bookstore. I would particularly request that gentleman to read it and get a greater idea of what is written. What 2 paragraphs can't make the book. Thank you.
Thank you, audience.